The growing season of 2010 has been probably one of the worst I can ever remember on cool season grasses. If you'll remember, in June and July we had ample moisture, and along with that we had a lot of heat and humidity, so we had perfect environment for turf disease. There was a lot of that going on that people didn't even realize. Then we roll into August and September, and we virtually had no moisture, so normally September is one of the better cool season growing months of the year, and we just had no moisture. So consequently, there's a whole lot of turf damage out there right now as we speak. Most people need to overseed, and we roll into this issue of, is it too late to seed? We're almost entering October now. Normally, the ideal time to sow cool season turf is around the last week of August through mid-September. So we're obviously out of that window, but the problem is we haven't had any moisture. So some things to consider, I guess, we're at that point in time. One thing that we really need to do, certainly in central Indiana where we have mainly clay soils, is one of the best things you can do for your turf is to core aerify, which means you bring a plug of, about 1.5 inches out of the soil, which opens up the grass to oxygen and moisture and fertility. So I would highly recommend that on a yearly basis anywhere where we're working with tight soils or heavy clay soils. So the problem again with that is we haven't had enough moisture. A lot of areas in central Indiana had about 1/2 inch a week ago, and some of the guys that do this that I've talked to said they're pulling out about 1 inch to 1.5 inch core, which is probably good enough, but that's been a week ago and it hadn't rained since. So as we move forward, we'd like a rain, and then I think it would be a good time to core aerify and still seed. So let's look at the options here, seeding versus non-seeding. October is still probably the best growing month for cool season grasses. So consequently, I think it's a better investment to have the seed in the ground in October versus waiting till the spring. Now, if you want to guarantee results, you'd have to have some way of guaranteeing the weather, which no one has that option. So we do have some gambling going on here, but I still would rather have the seed in the ground around the first part of October than to wait on a spring planting. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But what we might do when we get late like this, unless you're 100% bluegrass lawn, we might think about increasing the perennial ryegrass component of the mixture, because perennial ryegrass will germinate in about a week under these kind of conditions, whereas bluegrass takes about 3 weeks. Now we have a mix that's perfect for what we're doing here. As long as you're on a bluegrass ryegrass lawn, we've got a mixture called Executive Sun Mix, and this is 60% of 3 turf-type perennial ryegrasses and 40% of 3 Kentucky bluegrasses. So you're going to get some good results with that, even planting around the first part of October. Now, if you're on a 100% bluegrass lawn, let's stick with the bluegrass. Let's not enter perennial ryegrass into a bluegrass lawn unless we absolutely have to. If you're in a tall fescue lawn, the germ time for tall fescue is about 2 weeks. So again, we're getting on the iffy side, but again, I would still rather have the seed in the ground around the 1st of October than a spring planting. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind, seed germination is kind of like a 3-legged stool. You need soil temperature to be proper, and that's going to be fine all the way into late October. You need soil moisture. That's our big shortfall at this point, and you need seed-to-soil contact. You're the one that can control the seed-to-soil contact. The point is you can't just throw seed on top of the ground. You're going to have very, very poor results if you do that. So we need to do either core aerification and broadcast. That way the seed will go down into the cores, and as the cores melt, it gives a pretty good seed to soil contact. You can have some decent success doing it that way. The best way to do it is to rent a slice seeder. A slice seeder will put a groove in the soil and leave the seed behind, and you get very, very excellent results doing it that way. The hard way to do it is a steel rake. You steel rake out the dead grass, and you create grooves in the soil, and then you can broadcast the seed on top of that, and you can have some pretty good results doing it that way. Another way to do it is there's what's called a dethatcher, and that takes away the dead grass and again leaves some grooves in the soil, and hopefully the seed is covered with soil on 3 sides, and you can get some pretty good results doing it that way. So keep in mind, we're not going to go to the expense of buying seed and just throw it out there. You won't have good results at all. Another thing to mention, I guess, is that seed is relatively inexpensive this year compared to history. So your investment would be the seed. Keep in mind, all these soils need the core aerification, so we're going to do that anyway. And to overseed on top of that, we still think you'll get some decent results, assuming we're going to get some moisture here in October. We normally do. But again, your investment is in the seed, and even if it doesn't come up, it'll lie dormant until those 3 conditions happen: temperature, moisture, and seed to soil contact. So even if that's next spring, you haven't wasted your money. The reason we like a fall seeding more than a spring seeding is because, number one, if you're going to wait till the spring, make sure and get out there early. When I mean early, I'm talking even late March. And what we're trying to do is get ahead of the annual grass weeds that are going to be a problem for us anyway. So if we can get the seed in the ground in late March, and as soil temperatures warm up, then we'll get germination and hopefully establishment before the annual grass weeds like crabgrass have a chance to emerge. That's normally going to happen when soil temperatures are in the 70s, which normally is probably into June. So what we're trying to do in a fall planting is to get the seed established, so once we go into the spring, we can go ahead and apply our pre-emerge crabgrass preventers, and we don't have any chance of hurting the seedlings that are trying to come up, because most lawns out there now are just infiltrated with crabgrass, because when the cool season grasses went dormant, that's when the crabgrass comes up. So we're going to have that issue to deal with next early summer or late spring. Actually, around the first part of June, we need to think about handling that issue. So if we can get the seed out there within the next week or two, and I would put a cutoff, probably a drop-dead date of about the 10th of October. Certainly after that, I think the risks are in the favor of a failure. But again, if we have a late fall, just forget what I just said. So you're always taking that chance of how warm these soil temperatures are going to stay. But the grass only has to be about 1 inch tall going into the winter, and it'll survive. These are cool season grasses, so they're used to, they'll take a freeze, they'll take a frost. They can even take a frost and come back and continue to grow. So keep that in mind, so we can cheat a little bit into maybe early November and still get some development. But we know we got a lot of issues out there. I think a lot of people that think their lawns are going to come back, I think you're going to find that once we do get some moisture, there'll be a lot of grass that doesn't come back. So we're going to have to confront this either now or certainly in the spring. But we do like a late summer, early fall planting over a spring planting.